In a world where fans have grown tired of the same old cookie-cutter Comic-Con formats, only one con defies the odds. Only one Comic-Con stands what fans really want. Only one Comic-Con dares calls itself terrific. That's right, this August 17th through the 19th at the all-new giant-sized Mohegan Sun Expo Center in Uncasville, Connecticut comes Terrific-Con. Connecticut's Terrific Comic-Con is back with New England's largest gathering of comic book artists and writers. Plus, Terrific-Con delivers actors from your favorite TV shows and movies. And there's an all-new expanded gaming section as we give you tabletop gaming, video games, and so much more. Plus, don't forget, all kids 10 and under get in free at Terrific-Con and can be part of the all-new All Yeah Kids Comic-Con. Join us for 3 full days of Comic-Con action only in Connecticut at Terrific-Con. For more information, go to our website, www.terrificcon.com.
Welcome back, everybody. It's another new Word Balloon. John Suntress here. Very excited about today's show. Bryn Cimino is going to join us late in the show. She is a young artist and got her first big break doing a portrait of Roy Thomas in his Alter Ego magazine. We talk about that and her ambitions as far as being an illustrator. That's going to be a lot of fun. But first up, it's great to welcome back Paul Kupperberg, the fantastic writer and editor who did a lot of work at DC, was also at Archie Comics for the death of Archie, and not only has he got some new projects that we'll be talking about, like a brand new mystery novel that's set in the early 50s, a comic book-centered mystery, but also his website, paulkupperberg.com, is fantastic and literally is this treasure trove of past works that he's done, script samples, comic strip samples. Also, he did a lot of great editing for DC over the years. And not only the American product, but also the British product. And there's some great, short, but very effective superhero stories that he did for British annuals. The albums, as they called them, as far as the British market goes. And, man, I'm telling you, I discovered Grant Morrison, Alan Moore, and Peter Milligan's Superman stories that were done in the 80s. Little 4-page stories with great illustrations on them as well. But they're great. They're fantastic. And, again, things I've never read before. And totally worth exploring, paulkupperberg.com. That's where you'll find all this really neat stuff. Plus, he's just a funny guy. So it was a great opportunity to talk to Paul. Paul's going to be at Terrific-Con, and I'm looking forward to having him on the Superman panel, along with some other legendary Superman writers like Roger Stern and modern writers like Pete Tomasi. It's going to be great, and I'm really, really excited about having that opportunity to talk more about Superman with Paul. But we get some Superman conversation in there as well. He did the World of Krypton miniseries, which was the first DC miniseries. I had no idea, but he talks about that. And lots of great impressions. Also, Paul did a lot of his formative years at Charlton Comics. And along with collaborating with Steve Ditko on a little horror short, we really get into the inside story of Charlton. A fascinating comic book publisher out of Derby, Connecticut. They're making a documentary, and Paul shares some of the documentary stories with us. But really, as I've been saying with our conversations with Roy Thomas and Denny O'Neil, Paul is going to be another great example of, I think, things that we're all going to learn about the Silver and Bronze Ages of comics, because this is one of the foot soldiers that was there experiencing it all. So really great to welcome Paul Kupperberg and Bryn Cimino to today's Word Balloon. It's all brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners. Thank you, as always, League, for your great support. Truly appreciated. Man, I got some new people that have come on in the last couple days, and I thank you for joining the League, and I thank the ongoing League members as well. Good news. Word Balloon is expanding the brand, and I've got some great video content coming up as well. And I'm doing everything I can to hit as many platforms. And, beyond what we're getting here in the long-form conversations that I have with the creators, provide some video as well. My opinions might come out a little bit more on some of these videos, but also hopefully I'll attract more people to the big show with highlights of some of these great conversations and package them on YouTube and the various video platforms. So that's something to be aware of in the days and months ahead. I've got more free time, and I want to devote it to Word Balloon and expand the show, give you more content. And one of the ways I'm able to do that is through our sponsors, our great sponsors, and among those sponsors are the great group of the League of Word Balloon listeners. If you enjoy what you hear on Word Balloon, as I always say, the best way to help Word Balloon out is letting a friend know. But if you think it's, worth your time, and is the content that I provide each month worth the price of a comic book? Is it worth even $1 a month? If you could spare that and would be interested in subscribing to Word Balloon, it's a big help, and it's greatly appreciated. You can go to wordballoon.com and click on the Patreon ad there, or you can go directly to patreon.com/wordballoon and check it out. I really appreciate the support. It really is a massive help to me as I try to build the brand here at wordballoon.com. So thank you from the bottom of my heart, League of Word Balloon listeners. Word Balloon is also brought to you by InStock Trades at InStockTrades.com. Let's start things off and tell you about some of the great product that has Paul Kupperberg's name on it from InStockTrades.com that are available for you now at great prices. You can get the Daring Adventures of Supergirl. It's Paul and Carmine Infantino on the art, Dick Giordano doing the inking. This is the 1980s stories, the Daring New Adventures of Supergirl, including number 13 and then 14 through 23. So pretty neat stuff. Wow, Black Star is in there. Neo-Nazis are in there. How about that for some timely stuff? Also, the depths of Lake Michigan, the lake right by where I live. But really neat Paul Kupperberg Supergirl stories. 42% off, $17.39. You can also get Archie, The Married Life, trade paperback volume 6. Paul had a great run on Archie. Fernando Ruiz, one of his artists, also the great Norm Brayfogle as well. This is volume 6, and this is the finale, which features the death of Archie, the wrap-up to The Married Life. But as I say in the interview, I think a lot of the experimentation we've been seeing with Archie really started with The Married Life. Michael Uslan did the initial story, but then Paul took over, the courtship, I guess, of Betty and Veronica with Archie in the dual-track stories that they were doing. But then also, Paul continued it with them married. And, man, I'm telling you, throw Archie in the soap opera of a Riverdale life, and so many really interesting little nuggets of Reggie working at the newspaper, and Moose ran for mayor. Jughead in one track is with Ethel, and with another track, Midge is sick of Moose and gets with Jughead. Way to go, Jughead. So not only Archie having two options in his future, but way to go, Jughead. Nice going. And to the women as well. Really smart, sensitive stuff happened during Archie the Married Life. And this volume 6 is a great example of it. 50% off, just $9.99. More great Archie collections from Paul. You can get Celebrated, that trade paperback, 50% off, $7.49. There's also volume 2 of The Married Life, which I believe is the beginning of Paul's run. It's issues 7 through 12. And again, Norm Brayfogle doing the art chores on that. Pretty neat stuff. It's 30% off, $13.99. And you could even get, they might still have these damaged copies of Volume 4 that are at 40% off, $11.99. There's also Superman, the Man of Steel, Volume 8, featuring great 1980s adventures with Paul, appearances by Wonder Woman, Man-Bat, and others. It collects Action 598 through 600, Superman 16 through 18, and Adventures of Superman 439 and 440. It's 42% off, just $9.85. All from Paul Kupperberg, all at InStockTrades.com. Don't take my word for it. Check it out. Great books at great prices. If you get orders of $50 or more, you'll receive free shipping from our good friends at InStockTrades.com. As you heard earlier, Word Balloon is also brought to you by Terrificon. We're just days away from Terrificon. I can't believe it. It's the weekend of August 17th at Mohegan Sun. Very excited about being there. Go to Terrificon.com to find out more information. But, man, I am telling you, from the animation voiceover people to the movie and television celebrities that are going to be there to the new and classic comic book creators that are all convening at Mohegan Sun for Terrificon. I am very excited to be part of it. I will be doing 8 panels featuring a lot of the people you've been hearing lately on Word Balloon. More guests will come both from their panels at Terrificon after the convention. I will have the recorded panels here on Word Balloon that I do, but also really looking forward to spending time with some of these wonderful men and women and getting them to come on Word Balloon for the first time and to come back in the case of today's first guest, Paul Kupperberg. Very excited to have Paul back. Again, I really enjoyed my first conversation with him. As I say at the very beginning, I can't believe it's been years since that conversation, but it's great to catch up with him. And I can't stress it enough. PaulKupperberg.com. Go to his website. You are going to be very, very entertained by the stuff he puts up there every week. So without further ado, let's get into our conversation with Paul Kupperberg to start things off on today's Word Balloon. Welcome back, Paul Kupperberg, to Word Balloon. Man, I'm sorry it's been so long because I had a great time talking to you last time, and Terrificon is a great excuse to have you back, so welcome back.
Thank you. I just figured you never write, you never call, but that's okay.
I know I saw you at a New York con, and man, I guess it's been years. And I know it was in conjunction with Jonah Hex. I forget which artist. It was when Jimmy Palmiotti and Justin Gray were doing Jonah Hex.
Oh yeah, I was sitting next to Justin at I think it was the convention in Jersey.
There you go. Probably. Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, and we talked a lot about your Life with Archie run the last time we spoke, and I want to give it up to you again and say what a great run it was. And I really believe that that was the beginning of the experimentation with Archie that we're seeing even now.
Oh, absolutely. No, they've so much as said that to me. So, yeah, it did start. It was, it made them see that they could, they could step outside the boundaries of the funny 6-pager and get some depth to the characters.
Absolutely, and you provided it, man. And I'm psyched with what they're doing coming up in the fall. They're going to do Archie 1941.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
There you go. Yeah.
That's by Mark Waid and Brian Augustyn, or Brian Augustyn and Mark Waid.
That's exactly right. Yeah,
whichever it is, I'm a fan of both of them.
Me too, man. And I just talked to Mark about it, so I'm gonna have to get Brian on to talk about it a bit as well. Am I right? Was your Life with Archie stuff? Did you work with Norm Brayfogle on a lot of that?
Yeah, at the beginning, Norm was the artist on both the strips.
Yeah, I'm really sorry that he had the stroke, and it's kind of sidelined him for a while. I don't even know. Do you know the current status of how Norm's doing?
I really don't. I don't think I've seen much on him online, in social networks or anything. So, it was a shame. But fortunately, there was a reservoir of talent to choose from, and Fernando Ruiz, not a bad substitute.
Agreed.
And we had Pat and Tim Kennedy, who are just knockout artists. I mean, their Life with Archie stuff was beautiful, but I've worked with them since at the Charlton Neo Comics, the independent comics that I put out with some other people, and they've done a lot of my scripts. And they've done everything from funny animals to steampunk, and every single thing they've drawn for me has been in a different style.
Interesting. Now, tell me about No, go on and finish your thought. Yeah, please.
No, I'm just saying they're amazing. That was my thought.
All right, very cool. Well, tell me about Charlton Neo. Are you getting a chance to do some of the Charlton characters that DC didn't pick up? What's going on with that?
Yeah, well, there is the opportunity to do that, but the few decent characters that DC didn't get their hands on, other people have been doing, but that's fine. I'm just as happy to create new things for that than do somebody else's character again. I spent my whole career writing other people's characters. Now it's nice to do my own stuff. But we've been doing this about 4 years now. At first we were mail order only, print on demand, and still available at mortodd.com or through Amazon. But last year we were able to get three issues of the Charlton Arrow into comic shops, and we did break the Diamond 500.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Explain that to people, what the Diamond 500 is.
It's the top ordered 500 titles of the month. And, it doesn't sound like much, 500 titles, but there's probably double that amount being published these days.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a crowded shelf out there these days.
It is.
Now, compare it to, and forgive me because you're 10 years older than I am, but as I always appreciate talking to you guys in terms of the perspective of what the market was like, in previous decades and stuff. So yeah, I mean, how much more crowded is the shelf today than the 70s and the 80s?
Well, Sonny, let me tell you. Just to go back even further, when I was on staff at DC as an editor in the 90s and early 2000s, I was on staff, and Julie Schwartz, who an editor from the 1940s to the 1980s,
Sure.
and if you don't know that, why are you listening to a podcast about comic books? Julie was, wow, I just lost my train of thought, and that's
the market size.
Right.
Go on.
And when Julie retired, he was cleaning out his office, and he was dumping a lot of stuff in the trash. And I would come in to see him, to visit and chat with him, and I would just sit there going, no, Julie, no, you don't throw that away. I'll bring it to the library for you, whatever. So there was a ton of stuff that I saved, and one of them was a big ledger book. It was about, I don't know, must have been about 17 by 13. Big blue, like the old style loose leaf notebooks. That coarse blue cover, and big clamps to hold it. Screw-in clamps to hold the pages together. And it was probably about 2.5, 3 inches thick. And inside were pages on which were pasted little photographs, not photocopies, but photographs of the covers of that month. Each page was a different month of DC Comics from the 1950s. And under the cover was all the sales information.
Wow.
Yeah, so this was, for several years in the 1950s worth of books. And that I didn't turn over to the library right away.
Okay.
I did turn it in before I left staff.
Okay.
I did not walk out of the building with it, although I was tempted. But unfortunately, I have too great a sense of history of the place to have done that.
I hear you.
Curse my integrity. Anyway, the titles, it was everything from the Fox and Crow to Superman to Mystery in Space and Strange Adventures, The Unexpected, Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, whatever. And the lowest selling books in those days, there was all of the information from the print run to the estimates to the final numbers, and even the lowest selling book was selling about 230,000 copies.
Jeez.
Yeah, and that went on into the 1960s when, so by the time I got into fandom in the late 1960s and became aware of things like sales figures, they used to publish every month. It was a postal regulation since that they would publish every year a statement of ownership.
Mm-hmm.
And the statement of ownerships would give rough numbers of sales of the book. So you could kind of keep track. I'm sure the information, someone has compiled it and it's online somewhere. And you'll see the numbers even into the late 1960s and early 70s things were still hovering around 250,000, and then when I got on staff in the early 90s, books, when I first started in about 91, I think books were in danger of cancellation if they fell under 60,000.
Wow.
Now that's what, a bestseller?
That's a hot book, absolutely, man. That's a top 10 book, I think, really, when the actual final sales numbers come through versus what the comic book store buys, and if it gets to the, before it gets to the readers themselves. Yeah. Wow.
And I'd have somebody come to me and go, Dark Stars is at about 64,000. You're in trouble. You better watch out.
Dark Stars.
So,
that's great.
And then back in the early 2000s, early 2005, 2006,
Mm-hmm.
A friend who did an indie comic for Dark Horse, and a fairly high-profile creator, called me in stunned horror to learn that the first issue of his new series sold about 9,000 copies, but the publisher thought that was great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it wasn't that,
Say it again, because I stepped on you there. Say it again.
Oh, it's
just that, you said 9,000 and the publishers said it was great, and then take it from there.
Oh, and it was from their perspective, in this market, with that type of book, with that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. 9,000 at that time was a good number. And then flash forward to last year, where we were, our numbers on that Charlton Neo 3 issues that we had in the comic shop were respectable and actually did okay for us, but they were horrifyingly low.
Understood.
Yeah. But on the other hand, we only lost about 30% on the second issue, and less than 50% by the third issue. So we held on to more readership than a lot of books do.
Would the 3 issues be collected? Have they been collected in a trade?
Not yet. We're talking about, we're working on different things. We're getting out in the next year or so. We got a bunch of things in the works, and one of them is yet another 3-issue miniseries, the Charlton Neo Universe, that we will get distributed through shops as well. So we got that, and I did a 2-issue thing called Paul Kupperberg Secret Romances, and it was kind of a modernish take on romance comics. The catchphrase of the book was "Happily Ever After isn't what it used to be." So we're planning a collection of those, which will include a new story and a brand new cover by an old friend and collaborator who was gracious enough to agree to do it.
Keeping that under wraps until you're ready to put it out there?
Still ready to put it out there.
Understood.
And we're also going to be publishing a How to Write Comics book that I wrote. So
that's fantastic, and I want to talk a lot about your website, because you do give script samples not only for comics but also comic strips that you've done in the past, and I think that's incredibly helpful. Before we leave your current work with the Charlton Neo line, how would you guys do it? Are you doing it digitally at all, or is it purely a print product?
It's all digital.
So are you at Comixology and the like?
We do through Amazon and
okay, sure. Well, one thing I want to point out that is on Amazon as well is your novel, and I literally just bought it right before we started our conversation. It's called The Same Old Story.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, absolutely, man. No, I think it's again, I think you have the perspective to tell this story. I'll let you describe what the story is, but yeah, man, as soon as I saw the description, I'm like, oh, I'm there. So yeah, go tell us about The Same Old Story. Oh,
well, it's set in about 1952, and it's the lead character is a pulp writer turned comic book writer, and there's a sudden panic in the streets when a bunch of publishers start closing their doors due to problems with distributors. And in the middle of this, a very well-known writer for DC, for national periodical publications, which is what DC was known as in those days, falls off a train and dies under what turned out to be mysterious circumstances. And our protagonist, who is also the son of a legendary police homicide detective, kind of gets involved in this thing, in this case, and the book is split into kind of 2 stories. One is the actual story that's being told about, by the writer, and the other is the pulp story that he turns it into.
Interesting.
So the story is staggered between the two things. So you can, it's kind of telling it from 2 different points of view.
Well, and it's a great era to cover as well because, again, this is the beginning of the 50s decline in comics. So this is pre-Dr. Wortham and the juvenile delinquency scare that, resulted in the Senate hearings and the like?
This is just before that. And I use, I mean, most of the characters are fictitious, as are the comic book publishers and their titles and stuff. But I do use some real names and some, and in fact, the murder victim is based on the real life Robert Kanigher, who was an interesting man, to say the least. Actually, Howard Chaykin just described him recently as the Pat Hobby of comic books.
Who's Pat Hobby?
Pat Hobby is a F. Scott Fitzgerald character.
Oh, look.
At the end of his career, he churned out these stories about this Pat Hobby, who was a Hollywood screenwriter on the skids, and kind of hung around the fringes and bothered everybody. But Kanigher was a fascinating, quirky, insane man, and I used him as the murder victim. And at some point, just as an homage to Julie Schwartz, who was my editor for a while and became friends after that, I threw Julie in for a cameo in the book. And then he starts coming back, and he has several scenes because, of course, Julie was always there grabbing the spotlight.
Sure. Understood. And I've read Julie's autobiography and well aware of his past and his contributions to not only comics but the pulp world, and I know he was a sci-fi literary agent before getting into comics, and one of those original 1930s fans of sci-fi and everything. So Kanigher and I've certainly heard my share of Kanigher stories as well. So Kanigher did not. You modeled your murder victim after him. He did not die under mysterious circumstances, correct?
Oh, no. If he had died, everybody, whoever did it, would have proudly claimed it.
It's like I've heard about oh God, and now I'm blanking, the Columbia Pictures head of the studio, the infamous guy from the 50s. Say the name again.
Cohn?
Yes.
Yeah.
And when he died, that I think it was Red Skelton or somebody showed up at the funeral. I just wanted to make sure he really was dead.
Yeah. Yeah. And which reminds me of what Julie Schwartz said about Mort Weisinger, who was a Superman editor in the 50s and 60s and a notorious son of a bitch.
Yeah. And
Julie's, friend from high school and lifelong friend. But even Julie had to say about Mort, you know what it's going to say on his tombstone? Here lies Mort Weisinger, and lies and lies and lies.
Wow. Yeah, jeez. Yeah, I've heard the stories, and it's funny. I just spoke to Roy Thomas and Denny O'Neil prior to our conversation, and
well, Mort Weisinger is the reason why Roy Thomas did not stay at D.C.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah. He was such a tyrant and such a jerk. Well, was Weisinger the editor that used to kind of hold up paychecks and kind of make guys jump for him, literally?
Oh, yeah.
Wow. I mean, yeah, what kind of jerk is that? Jesus Christ. Unbelievable, man.
He would, writers would come in and pitch him stories, and he'd go, that's stupid. And then he'd give them something else. And then when the next writer came in and pitched him a story, he'd say, that's stupid, and then give him the last writer's pitch.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. Honestly, I kind of heard that about Julie as well, frankly, in some cases.
Nah, Julie, if Julie did that, it wasn't. He wasn't doing it intentionally.
Okay.
Knowing the way his mind worked, because when I sat down to plot with Julie, I would barely get 2 sentences out of my mouth of my story idea before he would start jumping in with improvisations. And it's like, well, no, Julie, you can't do that because you haven't heard the whole story yet. Wait until. But so his mind was just going. So. I would tend to think it was just like, oh, yeah, that was in there. He didn't even think. But who knows,
Understood. Well, again, I think same old story. It sounds great. And it's available now. You can either buy the physical copy or digital on Amazon. And, yeah, happy to mention that because Oh, absolutely, dude. No, you do great writing, and I know. Again, in our last conversation, you continued, and now I'm blanking on the character's name that you created from Atlantis for DC.
Oh, Arion.
Arion.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you write a couple new Arion stories as well recently?
Well, I wrote a couple of short stories about an Atlantean, a magical Atlantean lord.
I see.
With very similar circumstances and traits, but called something entirely and unactionably.
Yes. Understood. Yes.
So yeah, I did originally. It was a story for an anthology called Oceans of Magic, and I wrote what in my head was the last Arion story, and I subsequently wrote another short story to submit to an anthology. It didn't get accepted, so I did publish those two stories as an ebook a while back. But I'm at work on a novella along the same terms, the same characters, to do a physical book that I'll publish through Crazy 8 Press.
That's excellent. Yeah.
Which is.
Yeah, I know you've published through Crazy 8 before. Is that your imprint, or is that a group of you guys?
It's an imprint of, oddly, 8 of us, who, including Peter David and Robert Greenberger and Michael Jan Friedman. I should have written everybody's name down. Oh, my God.
Is Marty in there? Is Pasco in there?
No.
Okay.
No, he's just crazy on his own.
Okay. It's an impressive group that you've mentioned, obviously, as well. No, I've enjoyed their original stories and their licensed books as well. And I know for Titan recently, you did a Planet of the Apes story, and I'm a huge Planet of the Apes fan. So, what can you tell us about your story? Tales from the Forbidden Zone, correct, in that collection?
Yeah. No, I was invited to submit an idea, and happily it was accepted. It was fun to write. I'm not a diehard
ape guy.
Ape guy. Yeah, I frankly have seen. I don't think I've seen an entire new ape movie.
That's okay. No. Hey, man, it's like the Bonds. And don't get me wrong, I love the new ape movies and I love the Bonds, the new Bonds. But you can't beat those original 5 ape movies specifically. I think they are unto themselves just a great 5-movie story. And continuity that I love when whoever has the ape license, that's what they really need to go back to, because there's a reason why that stuff is still popular.
Yeah.
So what was your story about? If without spoiling, obviously.
It is about a young ape who finds an artifact from the astronauts.
Cool, that's great.
And uses it to reverse engineer aluminum.
Hilarious. That's fantastic. Man, I'm telling you, in the black and white magazines that Marvel put out, and I know Doug Munch wrote a lot of those really great stories as well. Did you ever have a chance to write any of the ape stuff back in the 70s or 80s?
No.
So it's your first shot. That's cool.
Yeah, no, it was great. It's a wonderful part of the job is that I get to play in all these strange little fields. I once got to write a Doctor Who story, and for an anthology, and I also wrote also for Titans Alien story.
Oh, cool!
And,
yeah.
So every now and then someone will come along and go, "Hey, you want to do the Lone Ranger?" Well, sure, why not?
That's cool.
Yeah. Although, as it turned out, when I tried to do the Lone Ranger, I found I had absolutely nothing to say about the character.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But I wrote a story. It was about another character, and the Lone Ranger is, in there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. And it's interesting, isn't it? I was just talking to John Cimino, who we were just discussing off the air. Isn't it interesting that some of these owners of the intellectual properties, they kind of blew it? And I don't know if you have a better perspective of why, but it really seems like a couple generations that potentially could have been Flash Gordon fans and Lone Ranger fans and some of these other, Doc Savage, they kind of missed the boat. And, now when a Dynamite or a Titan or whatever, Boom, decides to put some of this stuff out, the old great stuff that I grew up on and you grew up on and stuff and possibly worked on in the day, depending on the intellectual property, I think, again, these younger readers are like, I don't know these characters. I'm not really interested. And I think I think the IP owners kind of blew it. And I assume they were waiting for better movie ideas and films were in development that never happened. I mean, John Carter and the last Lone Ranger movie are classic examples of these things should have been a lot bigger. And again, well, in the case of the Lone Ranger, I just think it was not that great of a movie. But I wonder what your perspective on that is.
Well, I think Johnny Depp and what's his name, the director?
I don't remember who directed the Lone Ranger film, but
it was the guy who did Batman.
Oh, Nolan? Christopher Nolan?
No, the first Batman.
Tim Burton. Oh, Tim Burton did that Lone Ranger movie?
No. But I think Tim Burton and what's his name exist to ruin everybody else's child. This is what I think. These guys, it's like Johnny Depp has to come in and fuck up Tonto. I mean, please, like, is there any easier, noble, graceful character to capture than Tonto?
Agreed.
Agreed. And so, that stuff I have no patience for. I'm not a big genre film fan.
Interesting. Okay. Wow. As a genre writer, go on.
Well, I think part of my strength as a genre writer is that I don't watch this stuff, so I don't fall into their cliches and tropes.
Understood. Yeah. No, I can appreciate that, definitely. So, that said, are you not watching when, the Marvel movies or the DC movies have been coming out or the television shows?
I'll see about half to 2/3 of the movies.
Okay.
And the TV shows, the Marvel stuff didn't grab me. And the DC stuff was okay for a while, but I'm 63 years old and not a 16-year-old girl, so I don't know that I'm really the audience.
I understand. That's kind of what I said about Buffy and Angel when it was originally coming out, and I'm like, I don't care about. I mean, it's okay, good. There should be product for teen soap opera and that kind of audience. Obviously,
Absolutely.
That's okay.
Absolutely, and I'm happy it's successful, and I'm happy it's bringing these characters into other people's consciousness, and I'm happy that it's getting me bigger royalty checks sometimes.
Attaboy.
So, I'm cool, but I just don't feel the need to watch it. But I reached a certain point in my life a few years ago where I pretty much stopped watching most broadcast TV and ongoing series and stuff. You realize that every week, as much as I like, Elementary, it's the same show every week. It's just a different crime.
Sure.
So those things, it just I don't find them interesting or engaging anymore.
Well, I'm with you on Elementary. I think initially when they made Watson a woman, it's like, oh man, and it's nothing anti-woman. It's just Holmes and Watson is this great male relationship of two men that really loved each other, and that's why I love the Cumberbatch and Martin Freeman Sherlock. Yeah. Much more than Elementary. And Elementary, I know it's a quality show, and I know it's and Johnny Lee Miller's a great actor. Lucy Liu is a fine actress, but I just am like, oh man, it just felt Hollywood. What if she was a woman? And there's a little tension in there. It's like, all
right. But again, my take is on like all of them, all the hour longs. I don't think there's anything I watch regularly. I'll dip into the DC shows every now and then, like The Flash. I've always had this weird connection with The Flash because the Earth 1, Earth 2 thing, the Flash of Two Worlds story. When Flash discovers that that the other Earth really existed, he's looking at a newspaper in Keystone City, and the date on the newspaper is June 14th, 1961. and June 14th is my birthday.
Oh, that's awesome! Hey, happy belated birthday! That's great.
And when I saw that as a kid, I didn't read it in '61. I probably read it in whatever Flash annual it was reprinted in, 64 or 65.
Sure.
And I saw that, it was like, oh my God, and then my whole life, just as a kid, it was like, wow. As this grew, it was like, the multiverse was discovered on my birthday.
That's true. That's true. That's amazing. You're right, Gardner Fox. Did Gardner Fox write that first Flash of Two Worlds story?
Yeah. Pardon me.
Yeah, by all means, man. Grab your phone.
It's okay. I forgot to silence my phone, and
no problem, man.
And a robocall about to tell me that my credit is fine, but I should call them immediately.
But Gardner Fox wrote that original Flash of Two Worlds story?
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. Robert Greenberg, as I'm sure you well know, is putting out a Justice League 100 Greatest Moments book.
Oh, yes.
And he contacted me, and he'll be back on the show to talk about that in the weeks ahead. But talking about the JSA, first of all, let's talk about the way the Flash television show has handled the multiverse. I love, that John Wesley Shipp is Jay Garrick. I think that's brilliant, and I love the costume, and it looks fantastic, and the whole schmear. I really was excited, and like you, a couple years younger, but the Justice Society absolutely fascinates me. It did, I'm sure, in 100-page spectacular of Justice League. Actually, I do remember. I was going to say that's probably where I first saw them, but I think actually it was a reprint of that Brave and Bold story with Dr. Fate and Our Man.
Yeah.
And then Alan Scott, it's with Solomon Grundy, and Alan Scott shows up at the end, and they're like, oh, look, it's Green Lantern. And I'm like, that's not the Green Lantern I know. Who's this awesome guy in the purple cape and the red and green outfit and the blonde hair? That's Green Lantern? And it was amazing. And then to learn about the Justice Society and everything, it was like, oh, my God. And I love those original designs. So tell me about I'm sure you have that same love of JSA and the like.
Oh, absolutely. Justice League of America was one of my top 3 favorite comics growing up, as a kid. And I started buying these things off the stand around 1962 or 3. When those annual crossovers started, the Crisis on Earth 1 or Crisis on Earth 2, and, it just like, my head exploded.
Yeah.
Because I knew about the Golden Age stuff, but back then all you really did was hear about these things or, read in some fanzine. You couldn't, they weren't readily available. That stuff just always fascinated me. And when I started going to conventions and, could pick up an occasional copy of All Star, some coverless thing for a few bucks or whatever.
Sure.
It was just amazing to read these things, the Golden Age stories. They were so different and so goofy. It was just, but I love the characters. I mean, Wildcat.
Yes.
What a beautiful character. I mean, just simple and, love that stuff.
I'm a huge boxing fan and actually wrote for Ring Magazine and Boxing Illustrated and covered boxing both in print and radio for about 16 years. So yeah, I'm a huge Wildcat fan and got to meet Erwin Hasen before he passed and at a few New York cons and got to talk to him about Wildcat and my great regret is I wasn't doing the podcast, but while I was writing for Boxing Illustrated, the publisher, Bert Sugar, who was the former editor-publisher of Ring, he became a very good friend, and he introduced me several times to Bill Gallo, the wonderful sports illustrator, and could not have been nicer and missed my opportunity to get him on Word Balloon and talk about all his great sports illustrations for newspapers over the years and magazines. And good Lord, I mean, just such an amazing guy. And also it was fun to learn that Joe Simon also did his share of for people who don't remember Joe Simon's name, the co-creator of Captain America, that he did his share of sports illustration as well.
I'm inclined to think he was the creator of Captain America.
More so than Jack? Tell me about that. Hold on. Let's hear that for a second.
I mean, back in the early 70s when the New York Comic Convention was still something you could go to, I used to be in the fanzine business with Paul Levitz
Yes.
when we were, and one of the things we did was the program books for the New York Comic Convention for '73 and '4, I believe, and the 1974 one was the original sketch of drawing of watercolor of concept sketch by Joe Simon. Saying, with a little note on the bottom saying, Stan, here's the character we talked about. I think, he'd work good with a kid sidekick.
Wow.
And Phil Suling, who ran the comic convention, brought that over to the fanzine office, Paul Levitz's basement apartment. So I held this in my hand, and it's like, and I looked at both sides, and there was no Jack Kirby on it. So I don't know.
I hear you. Okay.
I'm just saying.
I'm with you. No, that's interesting. Go on, yeah.
Besides that, I really enjoy pissing off the cult of Kirby people. Jack Kirby invented comics, my man. Stan Lee would have been nothing without him.
I know. Well, and as a fanzine guy yourself, as you say, and I wanted to talk about that because, again, at your website, paulkupperberg.com, you've got examples of your fanzine that you did with Paul. And what was the name of it?
It was originally called Etc. And we started it in February of 1971. We were Maggie Thompson and her husband used to do the quintessential news, fanzine, Beautiful Balloon. And it was a mimeozine that they did out of Ohio.
Sure.
And they announced they were retiring the zine. So Paul and I, who lived in Brooklyn, New York, thought, well, we've been trying to do a fanzine. Let's see what we can do. We can just always go to Manhattan and get the news, from DC and Marvel.
Yeah.
So we did that. We scraped together $16, and on a Smith Corona manual typewriter, put together the first bunch of issues, and the rest is history. For Paul, me, I faded into obscurity, but Paul went on to very good things.
Publisher of DC, not a bad thing, absolutely. Understood. Did you, do you still have, it's funny, I just asked Denny O'Neil this same question, because Denny was telling me he did a history of comics for Scholastic years ago, and talked to a lot of, the people before him and stuff, and was able to, record these great conversations and then transcribe them for the book. Did you record your interviews when you would speak to your people, and do you still have any of those tapes or anything like that?
I don't have any recordings of this stuff. I do have transcripts of, DC used to do this monthly giveaway for the comic shops called DC Direct.
Yes.
Yeah. And I wrote that thing for, the last run I wrote, it ran for like 90 issues. So, and I wrote all of it.
Holy cow. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was monthly, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It was, it was kind of like, it was what eventually became the Diamond catalog stuff, So I would write all those news stories and all the issue descriptions, and and every month I did an interview with somebody in the news,
Sure.
And I still have the raw transcripts of all of those interviews.
Oh, Paul, that would be a great book. I mean, I hope it would
be a great book that DC would probably. I don't know.
Yeah, you got to talk to somebody. I understand.
If they would return my phone calls, I would talk to anybody.
Is it that distant now that I mean?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
No, it's there are some people who answer their phone, but they go on to tell me that yada yada yada, and there's always a very good reason, and the reason they answer their phone and they know it's me, and so it's very difficult.
Oh man.
I will say that I have had emails ignored by some of the top people in comic books.
Jesus. Well, you can always talk to me. Worst comes to worst. And again, paulkupperberg.com.
Give me the gig, and I'm.
Yeah, I understand exactly. Sadly, I got no wallet for you. That's the sad thing. when the lottery hits, then we'll make it happen. But PaulKupperberg.com, there are tons of examples of some of the amazing things that you've been involved with that I think any fan of the history of comics, and not only just pure comics, but some of the other product that has come out over the years. You wrote scenarios for the Six Flag action kind of stuntman shows that they do?
The Batman stunt shows at the Six Flags theme park. For a while there, I rewrote a bunch of existing scripts. I couldn't change them much because they had standing sets, existing sets that we had to conform to. But I rewrote a bunch of them, so the dialogue was a little less stupid, and I wrote several from scratch as well, including a Batman and Robin water show.
Oh, that's fantastic! I remember the ads, and I don't know if it was the same water show, but I remember the ads in the comics for that, and I'm like, oh man, I wish I lived close enough to go to some of this stuff.
This is in the late 90s. This is.
Okay. So it wasn't. I remember the 70s water show.
Oh no, that other thing. I think that was something in Florida where it was practically the whole JLA was.
Yes, on water skis.
No, that was something different. No, this was usually Batman and Robin or Joker, and I mean, I was even involved in the casting of these shows around the country because they would send the audition tapes to us at DC to approve. So I would sit through the audition tapes of these people, that want to play Batman or Robin or the Riddler or whatever, at a Six Flags theme park.
Sure.
So it was painful.
That's. Yeah, I don't imagine a lot of Oliviers were showing up, or I can't even think of any good classic. Crash Corrigan, I guess, would be a good.
There wasn't even a good Scott Baio in
all right.
that.
And now again, another product that you put on your website that I found fascinating were these text stories from England.
Yeah.
Of Superman and Batman, and these are written by Alan Moore and J.B. Delano, who did a great, Constantine, and Brian Talbot, another fine English writer, Peter Milligan. These are great stories, and they're short little stories that were in, I guess, they were called albums, kind of hardback annuals, basically, right?
Right. They would reprint three book-length Superman or Batman stories or whatever, and then they would interspace them with a couple of text stories that were also illustrated. There was, Mike Collins and Brian Talbot and whatever. I think Brian. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a bunch of, or all these guys. But this was 1985, so Grant Morrison was, just this crazy Scotsman over here.
Sure.
Well, he still is, but now, got a name.
I'm looking at the Morrison story right now. It was illustrated by Barry Kitson and Jeff Anderson, and it's called Osgood Peabody's Big Green Dream Machine. Yeah. Which is perfect for Superman and sounds very Morrison-esque. So.
Yeah. But, I come across these things. I've got, I had, 50 years worth of collecting.
Sure.
That I've been dragging around for 50 years. And as I said earlier, I'm 63. I've been lightening the loads for the last decade. I've gotten rid of literally thousands of items.
Oh my God! Garage sale? What are you, or just giving them out? What are you doing?
A lot of eBay.
Good.
Yeah, spreading the wealth.
That's excellent. I know Marty does the same thing with a lot of his stuff as well, and I'm glad to hear. Will you have that kind of stuff at Terrificon?
No, not generally. That's those tend to be a little bit too obscure, I think, for Comic-Con. For a convention like that. But I come across it, and I keep scans of everything. It's a lot to carry around. I mean,
I can imagine. Yeah.
It's literally tons of material. And I feel much better every time something leaves the house. It's like, one less thing I have to schlep to the next place.
I hear you, man. Oh God, and I'm kicking myself. I got rid of 95% of my vinyl records for that. And being in radio, I've been in radio for 30 years. Some of the radio only product that, like, I'm like, yeah, whatever. And I, sold it to a secondhand store for $1. And it's like, why didn't I keep that Paul Simon interview album that they made to support his Graceland album? And it was made so that, like, DJs from around the country, they'd give you a script and you could have a suit. I know you know the thing. I'm telling this for the listeners that don't realize some of the things that record companies used to do to help promote their product. They would send a script and you could do a pseudo interview with Paul Simon and they would feed you the questions. So you're live and, so Paul, tell us about the concept behind Graceland. And you'd cut to this album where there would be these great audio tracks of him answering the questions. I know Dr. Demento, I remember years after, and now I'm blanking on his name and I'm sure you'll come up with it. Hello, Mother, Hello, Father.
Alan Sherman.
The great Alan Sherman. Yes, indeed. He did an interview with Alan Sherman and they, for the same purposes, reading from a script and had the Sherman answers. And it was fantastic. And, it was 25 years after Sherman passed away and everything, but Dr. Demento did it. No, I used to love, just goofy stuff like that, as I'm sure you've collected over the years in your years of publishing. Oh,
yeah. Yeah, a lot comes along. And I turned out that I was a bit of a pat crack, so it's all coming to surface.
Yeah, it piles up. I can appreciate that. And you were in the licensing department, so I'm assuming as well that did you oversee things like you mentioned the Six Flags shows, some of the special things like, say, the American Dental Association decides they want to do a Batman comic, things like that.
Yeah, we called them custom comics. Yes, I edited a bunch of those for, including the Six Flags park guides. We did I think it was 17 editions of the Six Flags park guide, one for each park.
So would they have stories in them? Like
they had stories. There was a little Batman and Robin Riddler story that Steve Lytle drew.
Wow.
We had some Joe Staton Bugs Bunny.
Nice.
Yeah, so we would just do that. But a lot of the material was, the individual parks had their own, features and cover and all that. So, so we did that. I remember I did one written by Christopher Priest, who will be at Terrific Con this year. I'm very excited because he's an old pal, and I'm looking forward to spending time with him. But I had one for Claritin. It was the Congestant. It was Batman and Robin done in the animated style versus Poison Ivy, and Robin had an attack, so he took non-drowsy Claritin so he could fight crime.
That's fantastic, boy! And I'm sure Batman had the Claritin in his utility belt, of course. Or did they?
Yeah, probably. No, I don't think so, but that would have been good. I happen to have one in my belt, old chum. So things like that. We did the Celebrate the Century postage stamp albums in the year 2000. The U.S. Post Office did 100 stamps commemorating 10 from each decade, commemorating the 20th century, and we produced the superhero stamp albums, where the characters were, used in scenarios explaining what the stamp was about, and then there was a little area where you can paste the stamp into the comic.
That's cool. That's great.
Yeah.
Very cool. My favorite. Go on, please, if there's more about that.
It was fun. We were getting to use Jim Aparo and guys like that, wow, to do these things. So.
That's amazing. No, that's incredible. I was going to say my favorite custom comic was the one that a wealthy man created for his sons to be in a Superman story.
Oh, This Island, Bergman or something like that? Yes. It was. This guy paid DC Comics to produce a 16-page comic book for his son's bar mitzvah. And, I think Carrie Bates wrote it and Kurt Swan drew it and, regular Julie Schwartz. Well, no, probably not Julie edited, but still, it was a regular, it now, I've seen it going for like $1,000 on eBay.
That's amazing. I don't know if Marty wrote it or he just had copies. Marty might have written it, actually.
Marty edited it.
Oh, he edited it. Okay. Wow.
Well, you see, we were both in the. I worked for Marty. He was the group editor of that licensing, part where we did the comics, and I was in his group, and so there were like boxes of these things laying around. So we used to just go home with take a bunch of those,
Well, they're fun. I mean, what a great idea. And God, I hope the kid appreciated it. I always hear these great stories. I'm a Greek kid, but I certainly had a lot of Jewish friends and would go to bar mitzvahs. And I know that, man, sometimes it was, it's like a wedding. I mean, literally as expensive for people who don't know, like a wedding to put on some of these things. And sometimes it's like, my God, what do you think, son? That's all right. It's like, oh my God, that guy just spent a huge 5-figure sum to have this amazing thing, event for his kid. Yeah, whatever.
When my son was growing up, we lived in Stamford, Connecticut, and through various circumstances, we were able to get him into the New Canaan Country School.
Okay.
New Canaan Country School is quite the country school. He was classmates with Brian Williams' kids and Harry Connick's kids. Wow. And in fact, Paul Simon, I used to go pick him up from Paul and Edie's,
Wow. Edie Brickell, yes, Paul Simon's wife, New Bohemians, sure.
Huh?
I was mentioning Edie when you say Edie Brickell from the 90s group, the New Bohemians, and Mrs. Paul Simon, certainly.
Yeah. And, I knock on the door to pick up my son, because his daughter Lulu, they were both naturally she's into music, but so was my son, and they used to hang out together. And I was like, and Paul Simon would, barefoot Paul Simon would open the door. And and there's the hat he wore on the cover of, that album sitting on the table over there. And and you're just standing and you go, what, I just got to be a dad.
I'm him. Yeah, exactly. You're a peer. Exactly.
Yeah. It's just like, hey, hi, nice to meet you. My name's Paul too, So.
That's awesome, man. And
as Harry Connick Jr. once said to me, as I passed him entering the auditorium for some event, no, after you, man. So, cool. I had deep connection.
That's fantastic, man. That's insane. Now, we've been leaning into a lot of DC stuff, but you also did a lot of Marvel stuff as well. And as someone who did work for both, I'm interested in the differences of the companies when you were an active writer for both of them.
Well, I didn't do that much for Marvel. I did, I think I did two regular superhero stories, Captain America fill-in and a Savage Sword of Conan, I think about 25 years apart.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
And in between, I wrote for Crazy Magazine in the late 70s and early 80s. Oh,
sure. Yes, they're Mad Magazine. Absolutely. Crazy, yeah. Sure.
Yeah. I wrote the movie parodies and some other things.
Which movie parodies did you do? That's great.
Oh, I did the first Star Wars. I think I did the first 2 or 3 Star Wars.
Wow.
And at least one of the Star Trek. I did a couple of the Superman movies. But I don't, Apocalypse Now.
Perfect for Crazy, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. No, Apocalypse Now Land. It was, just the most dangerous theme park in the world.
Who were the artists on these things?
Everything, anybody from Bob Camp to Bob McLeod.
Very cool. Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Bob Camp's still with us. I don't know if forgive me, I don't know if Bob McLeod is, but I know Bob Camp's still
around. Yeah, Gary Halgren did a bunch of them. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Oh God, I remember again, this is, I'm, like I said, 10 years younger, man, so I was reading that stuff. That's fantastic. I loved all that stuff. And I was always thrilled to learn some of the great, comic book people that, were reading in the DC and Marvel superhero books and stuff. And then you find out, oh no, they did a ton of work for Crazy and Mad and things like that. I know John Severin, right? Didn't he do a lot of?
Oh, John Severin worked for Crack magazine.
That's
forever.
Right. Yes, Crack. Yeah, that's right. Another, and of course they exist now as a digital website and everything.
Yes.
So, what do you think?
In fact, my one of my partners in crime in the Charlton Neo Comics is Mort Todd, who was an editor of Crack magazine, and in fact we just put out a bunch of John Severin reprints of his Billy the Kid stuff from the original Charlton comics.
Wow, that's terrific.
Recolored from some photostats of the original art.
I also learned on your website, speaking back with Charlton, that you had a 7-page story that was drawn by Steve Ditko.
Yes, yeah. I got my start at Charlton. My first sales were made to Charlton Comics in 1975, and like a half a dozen stories or so. And one of those was drawn by Ditko, which was, like, made my little head explode. I mean, I distinctly remember. Like I was on my way. I was attending Brooklyn College at the time,
okay.
And I was waiting at the bus. I had transferred, and I was waiting for the bus. And I went into the candy store by the bus stop to check the comic books. And I never knew what issue my Charlton stories would be in.
Sure.
So I just had to flip through everything every month. And I pick up this thing and I flip through. Well, I didn't even do just like the cover, like because it was the cover story.
Oh wow!
And then I looked up, and it's like. Ditko, it's like that was it. I was useless the rest of the day.
I bet. Oh my God, that's amazing. As someone that did work for Charlton, I really haven't talked much about Charlton. I've certainly read the stories of their operation out in Derby, Connecticut. And did you ever go to the offices? And how much interaction did you have with the offices?
I never went to the office. Everything was. I don't even know if I ever talked to anybody on the phone. It might have all been done through the mail.
That's amazing. Yeah.
I have since been to the site in Derby, Connecticut. At the time, I was living in Brooklyn when I was writing for them, but I now live in Fairfield, Connecticut, which is about a half hour from Derby.
Okay.
And we went. There is currently a documentary in the works about Charlton.
Yes.
In which I am involved, and the things that are being learned are almost as fascinating as the things we can't learn about this company. There's some weird stuff going on, and the town of Derby, the historical society, their response to questions about the Santangelo family, who one of the families that owned Charlton and kind of employed half the town. Their response was, "Yeah, we know all about them."
Yikes! Yeah, a lot of criminal element involved with the production of what Charlton put out. They were kind of famous for putting out music magazines that would have the lyrics of popular songs without actually obtaining the rights to do that.
Actually, that is a mishmash of their early history and their later history.
Wow.
The two founders of Charlton. Levy and Santangelo met in prison, in jail. Levy was a lawyer who was involved in some political scandal, in some local Watertown political scandal. And Santangelo, he was from Italy, a bricklayer, but somehow got involved in publishing these music lyric magazines and published them without copyrighting them, and did time. Back in those days, they would put you in prison for that.
Sure.
And so he did a year in prison, as did Levy. And again, jail. They never went to prison. They were in, they were in jail and not prison.
Okay.
It seems different. Anyway, after they got out of prison or jail, they started Charlton. They had sons named Charles, so it was Charlton somehow evolved into that. And they began publishing the music lyric magazines and continued publishing them through probably through around late 80s and early 90s.
Wow, that long! Holy cow!
Yeah. And but they were legit after that.
Okay.
But this was a company that did its own production, printing, and distribution, which means that they were involved, and they had their own trucks in order to distribute their publications,
right?
Which comic books and paperbacks and magazines, and probably a lot of dubious material that was not sold over the counter.
I hear you. Yeah.
Their mantra was, "We don't care what it is, just keep the presses rolling."
That's what I've always heard. Yes.
And so the fact that they were involved in distribution and in trucking back in the 40s and 50s, this suggests a possible criminal element. Because
Yeah.
there used to be, in places like Chicago, there would be shooting wars over newsstand
I'm in
territory.
Chicago. I know exactly what you're talking about. Go on. Yeah.
Yeah. I lived in Chicago for a while, back in around 1980. I lived there for a few years.
Oh man, I almost moved to Connecticut because I was in sports radio for a long time in my broadcast career, and came very close to going over to ESPN, but they lowballed me, and I was making more money in Chicago, and I'm like, I think I'll stay in Chicago, thank you. So,
so there's stuff going on. But on the other hand, where they've been digging up interesting people, we did a panel. No, it was a library. We did at the Derby Library.
okay.
We did a talk with me and the filmmakers. Showed a clip and discussing it. And most of the audience was older. Many of them remembered, the company and all that. And a few of them had worked for the company.
Wow.
It was gold. And one woman stood up and said, I used to work the giant typewriter, and I practically leapt over the table at her screaming, "You're a machine!" Because Charlton Comics had a credit, lettering, A, period, machine.
Hilarious.
And what that machine was this oversized typewriter in which they rolled the comic art and literally typed it onto the page.
Wow.
And this was one of the women who had done that job. But, we had never everybody had figured out what the machine was a long time ago. It was a specialty machine, but it was for sale, it was out
Sure.
there. But nobody had ever talked to, ever knew who these people were. So we're running, we're finding interesting things like that. It's a slow, steady thing, but it's going to be a great, a great documentary. And, the people who got started at Charlton, myself aside, are pretty amazing,
Denny O'Neil, I know, was there, and
Jim Aparo,
yes.
Pat Boyette,
Yes.
Don Newton, Mike Zeck. You can just keep going.
Understood. I was going to say Bryn or no?
Yeah, Bryn, Staten. It was just, it was a great place because, again, they didn't care what was in the books.
Yes. Well, again, like you said, just keep the presses rolling. Yeah.
It's rolling, yeah.
Well, and one of my favorites, and again, I briefly talked about him with Denny O'Neil, was Pete Morrissey.
Yeah.
Who just cranked out writing and drawing and was a policeman by day or night. I'm not sure what shift he had, but his side gig was writing and drawing comic books.
I grew up reading the Charlton comics of the 1960s, and his Peter Cannon Judo Master was a particular favorite of mine.
Mine too.
I loved the
Thunderbolt. Yeah, unbelievable.
He had this George Tusker riff going, which was just great. Very simplified line and everything.
Absolutely, and even some of the ones that didn't make it, like I remember Vengeance Squad was this plain clothes, just kind of action comic and stuff. And yeah, man, no, this is what I hunt for when I go through the dollar bins is stuff like that. Absolutely.
But when I started work at DC in 91, one of the first titles I was handed to edit was Peter Cannon Thunderbolt, which Mike Collins was writing and drawing. And after, I'm working on the book and the first issue comes out and my phone rings one day and I pick it up and this voice growls, this is Pete Morrissey.
Oh, okay, that's how you say his name, Morrissey. Go on.
Yeah. And my first thought was, oh shit. Hates the book. But in fact, he was very pleased with the way we were handling it and thought the first issue was great and all that. And, said, don't hesitate to call me if you have any questions or about the character. Very sweet. And then a few months later, Dick Giordano stuck his head in my door and said, hey, I'm going to have lunch with Pete Morrissey at the Society of Illustrators. You want to join us?
Wow.
So I said, no, thanks. I'm going to have a sandwich at my desk. And no, I went, of course.
That's great. Yeah, what was that like talking to Morrissey like that, or Morrissey, or no, Morrissey? Excuse me.
Marisa, yes, I just sat there and shut up because I was sitting there with Dick, who was also a great storyteller,
And a big guy at Charlton as well. His action hero line got him his DC job, right?
Yeah, and Dick started in the art department in the 50s, and worked there for a dozen years before he became the editor.
Wow.
But also just one of the sweetest people ever, and a good storyteller, and he could tell a great story because he could never be interrupted because he was deaf and didn't know when you were talking over him.
This is what I've heard, and I know, and I've read a lot of transcriptions of interviews and stories. Go on. Yeah, honestly, Giordano's another one of those guys that, God, if I had a time machine, would love to sit down and get a chat with.
I'm really lucky. I got into the comics business, as a fan in the early 70s and professionally in 75. And when I got in there, remember, the industry was only 40 years old at the time.
Sure.
And the people who had created it were in their 60s and 70s.
Understood, absolutely. Yeah.
And I got to know these guys, a lot of them, and I got to work with them. I grew up on Kurt Swan's Superman.
The best.
That was my Superman.
Too,
that was
man.
the definitive Superman.
Yeah.
And the first time I write a Superman story, Kurt Swan draws it.
Wow.
And there I am, my stuff's being drawn by Gil Kane and Dick Giordano and Jim Aparo and all the, Irv Novick and
yes,
like holy crap, and I met these guys, I got to hang out and talk to Kurt Schaffenberger while he was drawing my Superman, my Superboy story.
Oh, that's great. Yes.
Carmine Infantino, who I work with a lot.
Sure.
So sometimes I look at the list of people who drew my stuff, and that old I'm not worthy. It's like, well, really, looking back at those stories, what I was capable of writing in those days, which was well intended but crude. It was like, really, they shouldn't have wasted Kurt on this.
Well, it's interesting because I appreciate what you're saying, and yeah, there was a leap in terms of writing that happened, in my perspective, in the 80s, and certainly in that Frank Miller era, but even before that, even guys like Doug Munch and some of these other guys, I think as, the 80s progressed. So was that was there an edict coming from editorial at that point of when comics grew up and said, hey, let's write them more like this and less for the 10 and 12-year-olds?
We were doing that because the 10 and 12-year-olds weren't buying them. So, why bother? But I think it was just, the chance to write these more involved stories was just like, if you're a writer, the 15th story about Superman, growing some weird appendage from red kryptonite. Howard Chaykin, just again something he posted recently on Facebook. He said the difference between Marvel and DC was that Marvel embraced its silliness. Marvel went with the silliness of the superhero comics and the things that that went on in them, and DC tried to treat it seriously, like this silly shit was life and death in these stories, as opposed to Spider-Man jumping around and having a wisecracking attitude about stuff. Everybody in DC was like, of course, this most ridiculous thing you can think of, this whatever stupid Mort Weisinger concept, that the story is about. The characters, took it dead serious. And, when you look at what comic books were about, there was certainly nothing serious about them because there was never anything, the comics code really forbid anything really serious from going on. And even after, real serious stuff did start going on, how serious is it? You've got these people who aren't going to die. because somebody's just going to pull the ultimate nullifier out of their ass and make them better the next issue. Yeah. I saw I watched the Avengers, the latest Avengers
Infinity
movie.
War, yeah.
Infinity Wars, and it's like there's no emotional impact. All these characters, you'd think that at some point, this old fanboy would go choke, gasp at all these people, but it's like, well, no, they're just coming back in the next movie, so why? Who cares?
Isn't it funny, though? I'm sure you're at least aware of it if you're not reading it, because I'm not reading it, but all of these websites are, here's a way Marvel can bring back, they can bring back an Infinity War, and it's like, all of us old farts are like, yeah, no shit. But I love the mainstream reaction of, oh my God, Spider-Man, he crumbled to dust. How are they going to make the next movie? And it's like, are you that stupid? Really?
In 2014, I did the Death of Archie storyline in the Life with Archie.
Loved it. Go on, please.
Life with Archie was an alternate universe what if series.
Yeah.
2 storylines running. What if he married Betty? What if he married Veronica? How would their lives be? Go. Book was about to wrap up. I said as a joke, well, why don't we just kill him? And they took me seriously. And I had to figure out how. But then, they announced the story, and it broke. I'm not kidding you, worldwide. I was doing interviews in India, in Australia.
I'm sure you were. Absolutely, man. Go on.
And people were like, how can you kill Archie? Well, Archie is still over there. He's still being published in 6 different titles. This is just this. They don't get it. And I've killed characters that have actually stayed dead.
Which characters did you kill? Tell me.
Oh man, which characters haven't I killed? I killed Aqua Baby.
Wow. Yes. Oh my God. Trauma.
Sure.
Massive trauma. Way to go, man. Way to give Arthur and Mara a serious, complex.
You know what? He kept wetting himself. Vigilante, Adrian Chase.
Oh, please. And honestly, man, that was such a disturbing ending. And I've talked to Marv about the series, and I don't remember if you and I talked about your run of the series as well. I love that series. And man, that is some hardcore shit. I don't know if DC or Marvel can do that today.
That was when I grew up in comics, as a writer, that series, because it was the first time it wasn't, and I love Superman. I would marry Superman. You don't understand what Superman meant to me growing up. Although if I can ever get the damn memoir published, you'll find out. But it was just, but still, it's Superman,
Yes.
And I wrote, in the 80s, I was writing at the same time, Superman, Action Comics, Superboy, Supergirl, DC Comics Presents, and the Superman newspaper strip.
Jesus, man. Yes, yeah, and again, I wanted to get into your Superman stuff, but please continue.
But, so, after all of that in the early 80s, and then I go into stuff like, after the crisis and I'm no longer on Superman, I go into stuff like, the new Doom Patrol and then Vigilante.
Mm-hmm.
Phantom Stranger miniseries came at that point.
Yep.
And Vigilante was the first time it was like, all right, this is still, this is the only comic book I've ever written where there was actually something at risk for the character. It's like I knew that when we killed him, and we didn't plan on killing him. We just one day, I was kind of looking at where we were, and it's like, well, crap. You can't keep this guy going because he's unsustainable after all.
Yeah, for people who don't remember, Adrian Chase, he came out of Teen Titans, very Daredevil-ish in terms of he was a judge by day and took on the vigilante role to really, it was kind of a combination of Daredevil and the Punisher.
Punisher, yeah.
So yeah, he was killing criminals, and yeah, they were kind of, there was kind of a chase to, put 2 and 2 together that Adrian Chase was the vigilante.
Yeah, and during the run of the book, we also had 2 other people put on the costume.
Yes.
And die bloody,
That's right. Wow.
force. So, so it was suddenly I was doing a book where, not only could I blast holes in people, but they stayed there.
Yeah.
Yes. And for the first time, it made me realize, you could just keep going. It's like they were letting us do it. They were letting us do these stories, and he was getting crazier and crazier. And finally, we reached a point where it was like, well, this guy has to end it. And it would be easy to have somebody else shoot him down, but that doesn't mean anything. So the series ended with the character in his bathroom in front of the mirror and puts a gun under his chin, and pulls the trigger, and is found, and is cremated, and is dead. Damn it!
Damn straight.
And then we spun the book. We kind of took some of the characters and spun it out into the Checkmate series.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Of course.
But that was like the one time in comics where I actually got the opportunity to do something that had some kind of depth.
Forgive my buzzer. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I remember it well, and I also remember and I don't remember the specifics, but I remember the text piece afterwards as well. And was there any blowback from readers or advocacy groups of how dare you do this or any crap like that?
Nothing that I really remember. I mean, there was no. Honestly, I don't remember. I mean, there must have been some reaction, but I don't remember anything.
Okay. Yeah, man. No, it was honestly. The design of the costume is what I'm sure initially attracted me from a cover standpoint. I wasn't reading Teen Titans. I was one of those few. Again, being an adult, I'm like, whatever. Good luck with the Teen Titans. But yeah, I really got into Vigilante, and yeah, man, I read it right till the end, and I remember that cover as well of him standing in front of the mirror, and that moment, and that was disturbing shit, man. And like I said, I don't know if they can do that today. I mean, God, they've taken Wolverine's cigars away, so I don't think a suicide, and obviously Tom King, I don't know if you're aware, is dealing with superhero post stress disorder. And he or PTSD, and there's going to be a series from DC coming out in just a couple months called Sanctuary, and I don't know how far they're going to let Tom go with that, but
shouldn't they call it Suicide Squad?
Well, but obviously in that case, that was the threat, of course, but I don't know if they've ever actually. Other than I remember in the cartoon, and actually I'm sure in the book there was some villain whose head got blown off or whatever. But for not complying to whatever Amanda Waller was putting out there. I've talked to John Ostrander obviously about his version of the Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, no, that was some heavy stuff, and honestly, I'm so glad you brought that up because yeah, and like I said, I talked to Marv about it briefly at a convention a year or two ago. But that's been my only conversation about Vigilante and his shocking suicide death. Man, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff, man. I also wanted to bring up, as we talk about Superman, your World of Krypton 3-issue miniseries, and of course with the television show going on. But I always loved the backup stories back in the day of World of Krypton, and I enjoyed your specific history and really kind of getting into Jor-El and Lara's relationship and the ability of Superman through typical Kryptonian science to be able to finally see the relationship between his parents.
That's right. To see things that he wasn't present to witness.
Yeah. Including the shrinking of Kandor.
That's right. Well, it's that thing with, it's a thing you can do in comic books. You can kind of fudge the whole thing. You can fudge reality. You can kind of, just make it work.
Sure.
Because, but yeah, that was back in primitive times. That World of Krypton was originally supposed to be a 3-issue arc in Showcase.
Oh, sure.
And that book got canceled, and the World of Krypton was stuck in a drawer. And then the Superman movie came along, the first Christopher Reeve film, and they couldn't do any comics based directly on the film. because of contractual problems with Mario Puzo.
Oh, wow. The man who originally wrote the screenplay for Superman. I know it was drastically changed by Donner and Mankiewicz.
But that's why there was never any comic book adaptation or novelization of the film. That's why they did Elliot Maggins' rather excellent Last Son of Krypton.
Was just talking about that both on Facebook and to friends, and I'm so glad that Elliot has re-released it, because you're absolutely right. It's one of the best Superman stories ever.
Yeah, it's that, and Tom DeHaven's It's Superman is another great book.
I agree.
So they had a scramble for a Superman product because the movie was coming out, and they remembered they had this 3-issue thing in the drawer, so they put it out, just as a miniseries, and it turned out to be the first ever intentional comic book miniseries.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize that. That's crazy. Because, I remember buying that in 1979. I bought all 3 issues, absolutely.
Yeah, there were other, earlier things that lasted, 2 or 3 issues, but that wasn't the intention.
Wow. Okay, that's crazy, man. And so like you said, you mentioned some of the artists that you got to work with when during your Superman run, and Superboy, of course, and Supergirl. Are they using? You mentioned, and I hope so. That are they using any of the characters you created, and sounded like they're taking care of you if they are.
They've used a few of the characters in Supergirl. They used and in Tomorrow they used Valentina Vostok from the new Doom Patrol.
Oh, of course, yes.
Yeah. And they've used a couple of villains from Supergirl in the show. I have participation, as we call it, in the business in characters I created. So there is some remuneration involved.
I'm glad to hear that.
But the big bucks is the movies.
Yeah, Jerry Ordway kind of spelled that out to me. And again, I'm not. I really don't want to get into your guys' personal business, but as a fan, we just want to make sure that you guys are, being acknowledged monetarily as well as just,
DC has always been really good about that. They, I always get comp copies of anything, and if something is used, and I'm the credited creator or co-creator or whatever, it's never an issue.
Good.
Thank goodness.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Did you watch that first season and all of Krypton?
I got about 25 minutes into the first episode and thought, why do they sound like they're like living in Brooklyn today? So again, I don't have a lot of patience for genre stuff.
I'm hip.
I've been writing other stuff on my own time. I've been writing my own, prose stuff, quite a bit of things. And it's, when you start writing prose, comic books become very annoying because prose is very liberating. It's just you. You don't have to worry about an artist, pulling off the gag or the bit or anything or how to describe. It's just you. It's you alone with the page. It's you alone with the story. It's totally your responsibility. And so when you have to do silly comic book stories with silly stuff happening, it's kind of like, no, let me get back to reality. That's a lot more fun.
I understand. Yeah.
So I've been enjoying that, and it's kind of and Frank, again, I haven't watched the Marvel shows, but the dialogue on the DC shows is ridiculous. Human beings don't talk that way. First of all, everybody doesn't use each other's names every sentence. I'm sorry,
I'm with you.
But no, it's just I can't. I listen to it, and after a little bit, it's just like I can't listen to these chimps gibber anymore. It's just, it's just. And again, I am not the audience.
I'm yeah, I hear you, man. Yeah.
And I'm also a pretentious, English lit major, who is, currently reading Truman Capote and Evelyn Waugh.
Nice.
So, it's like, you don't go by me.
I understand. Well, now in a couple weeks, we're already in August. I was going to say next month, but it's August 1st when we're talking.
Yeah.
In just a couple of weeks, we're going to be at Terrificon. You're going to be on a great Superman panel with contemporaries and people who came after you as well. So I'm looking forward to a good Superman discussion there.
I think I'm the earliest. Stern, Tomasi, and Ordway. Yeah, I know. I got them all.
There you go, man. No, it's going to be great, and truly, I look forward to picking your guys' brains and discussing Superman and everything. And I've it's been fun. It's been great reading your comic book stuff. And again, like I said, thrilled to buy the new novel, and I'm going to bring it back up again. The same old story. So looking forward to that. And hey, man, I hope you'll come back. We've almost been talking for 90 minutes now. I figure I'll let you go. And
well, I do want to say one more.
Please, absolutely, Paul.
Speaking of Terrificon, I've also doing a few other panels as well. I'm doing a Toys and Comics panel. We're going to talk about Masters of the Universe and G.I. Joe and stuff with me and Larry Hama and Michael Golden.
That's going to be a great panel as well. And you did that great miniseries of He-Man versus Superman. So please go on.
That's right. I did the first comic book Masters of the Universe stuff. But I'm excited about both those panels. However, on Friday, the day before, I have two other panels. The first one is with a woman named Barbara Friedlander, who was a romance editor at DC Comics in the 1960s. And the co-creator of Binky.
Wow!
And,
yes.
I'm looking forward to talking to her about her career and all the great people she worked with. Joe Orlando and J. Scott Pike and John Romita then this has just got me this is my fanboy geek time. Friday at 7 to 8 o'clock. I will be sitting down to talk to Henry Winkler.
God, I'm so glad you brought that up, Paul, because I meant to talk to you about that. And honestly, both of those panels, because I would love to hear Barbara's point of view of her time. And again, the romance comics and Binky, the teenage DC character. But tell me about, I'm sure you're excited as hell to talk to the Fonz. Tell me about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's again, I was there for the whole, Happy Days thing,
sure.
and I also remember him doing guest shots on Mary Tyler Moore and things like that.
Yes, and Bob Newhart, absolutely.
But in 1973, the summer of 1973, it was the first time I saw him because I was passing the schoolyard of Samuel J. Tilden High School in Brooklyn, where I had just graduated the previous June. And there were a bunch of guys in leather jackets.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Go on.
Yeah. And they were filming Lords of Flatbush.
A great television movie. Go on. Yes.
It wasn't a TV movie. It was a theatrical
it was a
movie.
theatrical. I didn't realize that because I remember seeing it on television the first time I saw it. Please continue.
And there were these goofs, in leather jackets in August in Brooklyn. And we start yelling and all that. And it was, a couple of crew people. I think it was a guerrilla filming,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And we start yelling and, screaming at them, and they start, they're trying to film. And finally, one of them turns around and, tells us to get the fuck out of there. And, starts threatening us. And we're laughing because, I was like, yeah, go ahead, chase us. It'll take you an hour to get out of the schoolyard. And this is our neighborhood, so let's have fun. Anyway, we finally left them alone. But it was Sylvester Stallone who told us to fuck off.
Hilarious, yes.
Yeah.
And this is 2 years before Rocky. Go on.
That's right. And then it was Perry King.
Perry King, absolutely, the lead, who for geeks played Han Solo in the BBC Star Wars radio adaptation.
There you go.
How about that? Go on.
And Henry Winkler.
Yes.
And this was the movie The Lords of Flatbush, which was being filmed in East Flatbush, so I don't know. But anyway, so, then the next year we see this movie, The Lords of Flatbush, and we see it, and then it's like, holy crap, there's Tilden, that was our school. And then I just found this out on the Batman Brave and the Bold animated show. He was the voice of Ambush Bug.
I totally forgot that. That's fantastic.
And I wrote the first Ambush Bug story.
I didn't realize that. That's amazing, man.
Yeah, it was an issue of DC Comics Presents that I did. It was Superman and the New Doom Patrol, and Ambush Bug shows up, and back then he was pretty much Bugs Bunny with teleportation.
Yeah.
But that was the first story. So
was he Bob Rozakis? Did he create Ambush Bug as well, or
no? Keith Giffen.
Was it yourself then and Giffen that are co-creators, or was it Giffen on his own?
So it was Giffen's character. He brought it. He was going to be drawing the issue of DC Comics Presents, and we sat down with Julie to plot out a story. And Keith said, "Hey, I got this wacky character," and I said, "Oh, great! I love wacky." And so it was Keith's character. He's the sole creator of Ambush Bug. I just happen to be the first person to write him.
Very cool. That's excellent, man. I know Keith is also going to be at Terrificon.
Yeah,
and he's become kind of the J.D. Salinger of comic as far as granting interviews. I got him very early on when I like within the first year.
The Salinger, but without the openness. Yeah. It's but I'm gonna. I actually went online and got an issue of Happy Days with Winkler on the cover for him to sign.
That's great.
But I'm gonna also bring that to DC Comics Presents to sign.
Sure,
too. But
that's amazing. Who made the Happy Days comic?
It was Gold Key.
Oh, well, of course. Who did? And Charlton, of course, did their TV licensing, and everybody did. I know DC had Welcome Back, Kotter back in the day.
Oh, sure. Well, DC was doing licensing back in the 50s.
That's true.
They had Bob Hope, Martin and Lewis, a couple of cowboy. I think Hopalong. Did they do Hopalong, or did they do? Well, they had a couple of cowboy.
Well, and I know they had a couple popular radio shows as well, like Mr. District Attorney, and I believe Gangbusters was also published by DC.
Yeah, so they've been doing that a long time, and in the 60s they licensed Welcome Back, Kotter. I think Bob Oxner drew that.
I know Mark Evanier, who also worked on the TV show, worked on the comic as well.
Yeah.
No, that's great. No, dude, I am I know that Henry Winkler is in good hands. And another one of my favorites of his, I hope you bring it up, is the Carl Reiner movie he made about wrestling, The One and Only.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
mean, no, and of course Night Shift, and I am a huge Henry Winkler fan as well. And every time he pops up on something new, isn't it great that he escaped the Adam West, Clayton Moore fear of stereotyping and stuff, and that he's had such an amazing career, an incredible career, both as a producer and an actor post Fonzie.
And I love. Have you watched Barry on HBO?
Yes, he's great on Barry. He's wonderful on Barry. Yes,
he's got this. He plays this, this kind of vague, self-involved guy now. Kind of the same. It's similar character on Arrested Development too.
Yes, Bob Blah.
Yeah. So, but he's great. I just
Royal Pains. He was great as the main character's father and stuff, and kind of a con man. And God, even that. Do you remember that Western anthology show? Oh God, now I'm blanking. A Canadian show. I forget what it was called, but it was great. It was like Weird Western Tales. It was like a Twilight Zone set in the West, and I can't remember the name of it. But he kind of played this nebbishy guy that it was always about a gun and it exchanging hands from various people. And it was just a one-off that he did on this anthology show. But, Dead Man's Gun. It was called Dead Man's Gun. Okay. And, he was – I mean, no, he's always great. And it's just – I mean, God, even in the Kevin James movie about mixed martial arts, Here Comes the Boom. And he's the music teacher that Kevin James kind of saves in the movie. He's like the plot really revolves around his character and his music department being threatened with cancellation. It's a tremendous movie.
Gosh, how did I miss that?
That's pretty –
Kevin James, you say? Well, that's...
I got to be honest, and I'm more of a boxing guy than I am an MMA guy, but it's a cheesy movie, but it for me it worked. I don't know, man. And again, I respect your, because there is a lot of conversations that would never happen sort of things. But
I spent 10 long weeks working for WWE.
Oh, man. Yikes. Good Lord. Jesus. Paul, come back. I hope you'll, I really appreciate you coming on and talking about this stuff. And, there's a ton of stuff we haven't even gotten into. We'll get into it a little more in the next couple of weeks on the Superman panel. But
people tuned out about 45 minutes ago.
No.
Cool.
Not at all, man. Not my audience. They come for this kind of history and perspective. And truly, I appreciate that, because one thing that I keep saying is, pre-90s, not everything has been put down on video or audio or even written about. And we need people like you that know the real story. And I sometimes get angry at my fellow podcasters or bloggers today who think they know their history. And it's like, it didn't happen that way. And you should talk to somebody who was there and can actually give you the perspective you're looking for. So I really hope your memoirs come through. And again, things like, and I know it's fiction, but the same old story and other projects like this, and your website, again, paulkupperberg.com, because I'm thrilled that you're going through your archives and bringing that stuff up, putting it out there. And I'm telling you, people, you're in for a deep dive if you go to Paul's website of a lot of really, really interesting stuff.
That's crazy.
Thanks for talking today, man.
No problem. It was a pleasure.
That's Paul Kupperberg. I look forward to having him on the Superman panel that we're doing at Terrificon, and have him talk more about his run on Superman and Adventures of Superboy and Supergirl. And you can guarantee that I will have another one-on-one with Paul Kupperberg in the months ahead in a future Word Balloon. What a great conversation, and truly look forward to more future ones with Paul. Let's switch gears now. As you know, in my last conversation with Roy Thomas, I talked up his wonderful magazine, Alter Ego, part of the Two Morrows publishing group. And Roy just does this incredible job, and his group of writers and artists as well, of bringing us wonderful stories about creators from the Golden Age, the Silver Age, and certainly even the Bronze Age. But it was great to see that Roy gave a cool opportunity to this next guest, Bryn Cimino. And Bryn is the son of John Cimino, Bryn is the daughter of John Cimino, a.k.a. Stretchy Hulk Guy. If you know your toys, you know about John. John is always with Roy when they go to conventions. And Bryn, at 13 years old, got a great opportunity from Roy to draw a sketch of him in an issue of Alter Ego. It's the issue that there's a beautiful illustration of Gil Kane on the cover. And Bryn does an equally beautiful illustration of Roy inside the magazine. And it's great to hear a young person who's getting really excited about art talk about her ambitions and her hopes. And very cool of Roy and Dan Thomas as well, Roy's wife, to encourage her with her art. And, it's a great experience. So it's a pleasure to talk briefly with Bryn Cimino about her experience drawing for Alter Ego. And it's great to hear from a young artist and kind of what they want to do. And she's great. She's a freshman in high school, about to start her freshman year. But I'll let her tell her story in this segment now on Word Balloon. Bryn Cimino, welcome to Word Balloon. Congratulations on your art career. Man, you're already published.
Thank you.
Your dad told me that you did this great sketch of Roy and Roy Thomas, and it's in his Alter Ego magazine, and I've seen it. And it's a very good likeness of Roy. How long has Roy been a family friend?
Well, my dad has known him for a long time, and I met him at his Halloween party, and he is such a nice person. Like, he's so genuine, and he's so kind, and he just being around him, it just makes you so happy. Like, when we went to his house, we looked at his farm, he was introducing us to all his animals, and he sends me cards about them, and it's so amazing to know him, and it's such an honor to know him too. So it's just great knowing him. That's great. Are you going to be at his Halloween party this fall? Yes, 100%. Do you know what you're going to be for Halloween? I have no clue yet, but probably a superhero again. Do you like comics and you're into superheroes? 100%, yes. What are your favorite superheroes? Well, I love Artemis, and actually Roy created Artemis, and he said that he would name her middle name Bryn in honor of me. So I found that like amazing. So, and she's like one of my favorite superheroes. So that's crazy.
That's really cool. Now I'm trying to think. Has Artemis been in any of the live action CW shows yet?
I don't think so.
I know she was on Young Justice, right?
Yeah, that's like my favorite cartoon.
Me too. I love that show too, and I'm excited. Are you going to get DC Universe so you can see season 3?
Yes.
Excellent. Yeah, they see that. You got to hit up Dad for that. Make sure you get that. That's cool. That's
Yeah.
great. I talked to Greg Weisman, the guy who is the showrunner, the creator behind Young Justice. He's a really cool guy, and I think he kind of gets these heroes, because I think for a while DC was, I didn't like the direction DC was going in, but lately I love DC, and ever since Rebirth. So, what are your favorite comic books?
Well, my favorite comic books are basically anything X-Men related. I love X-Men.
Cool. What are your favorite X-Men characters?
Wolverine and Phoenix are my 2 favorites.
Excellent. So, Wolverine being the guy Wolverine, or his daughter who took over being Wolverine for a while?
It's the guy Wolverine. He's my absolute favorite. I think he's so cool.
That's fantastic. What artists influence your work, or the ones that you kind of look at and admire?
Well, artists, I don't really have any in general. I kind of go around the web and I look up inspiration and stuff like that. And also, my dad a little while ago gave me, it was like a superhero drawing. It's like how to introduce you into learning how to draw, how superheroes are drawn in comic books. And I found that really helpful for drawing new poses and stuff like that.
That's cool. Was that the book called How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way?
Yep.
I know that book. There you go. That's a great book, and those are guys that worked with Roy back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So you're learning from the masters. That's terrific. We're talking about animation and Young Justice. Would you ever want to learn animation and go in that direction?
Well, I'm not sure yet. I'm leaning more towards fashion, and I think that drawing is really helping me with that. And Roy always tells me to practice drawing and stuff. He always encourages me, and I find that really helpful and inspiring that someone like a legend like Roy Thomas would tell me to keep on drawing and say I'm really good. That's amazing. And so animation's really cool. And I would think about it, but I don't really know what my future holds yet. But it would be really exciting if I went that way.
That's great, though, and I'm glad to hear that you want to tie your art into fashion, and maybe fashion design or something like that as you get more experienced and start thinking about do you try to create costumes or just basic women's fashion when you draw?
Usually, I don't know. Sometimes I sketch random things. And I sketch them down in my little notebook or something like that, just for inspiration off of other things, and I create my own out of it. And sometimes superheroes also help with that. They also help with some inspiration for that. So I find that's a big deal.
That's excellent. Now, you told me off the air you're going into your ninth grade, your freshman year in high school, and that's terrific. And I'm really glad to hear that you're going into a school that has not only art classes, but you were even saying advanced art classes, right?
Yes, and I definitely want to try and get into that because maybe it will help me in college and stuff.
Sure, absolutely. That's great. And you have friends that draw as well?
100%. I have a group of friends. We all draw together sometimes. It's really fun.
That's fantastic. The comic book pros get together socially, and they'll sketch and stuff, and they'll go to a bar or they'll go to a coffee shop or something like that and hang out and all sketch together. Because sometimes drawing it's kind of solitary. You're by yourself sometimes just doing it. So I'm glad that you've got a bunch of friends that you guys look at each other's stuff and compare and get inspiration from each other.
Yeah, my dad used to take me to conventions when I was really little, so I'd get always to see the art around and how people drew, and that also really helped me. That's great.
That's great. Are you going to have a chance to go to any other conventions this year before it's up? You were telling me off the air you're not going to be at Terrificon.
No, I'm not going to be at Terrificon. I hope I can make it to some conventions. I'll see what happens, but it's always really nice. It's so nice there because people are really friendly, and it's nice to see how they're they love superheroes and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Tell me about getting the opportunity when Roy asked you to draw, how it happened in terms of you drawing for Roy and Alter Ego.
Well, it all started, my dad introduced me to Roy, and Roy is such a nice and sweet person. He's generous. I gave him a picture of my previous art that I had drawn, and he loved it so much that he gave me this opportunity, and I was so scared that I was going to mess up, but I was also really excited because I'm drawing for Roy Thomas. Roy Thomas asked me to draw for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you did great, because really, I think it's a terrific sketch, and I don't know. I hope maybe there's a reason to draw something else for Roy in the future. I mean, has the door opened if you want to do that, or if he thinks of something? How does the future look for you possibly drawing something else for Alter Ego?
Well, Roy said he would always recommend me for things, so I'm not really positive. I don't really know what's going to happen for the future, but I am really excited to see what would come up.
That's excellent. Hey, man, you are very ahead of the curve from a lot of other people having a recommendation for Roy Thomas already on your resume. That's fantastic. Man, look at that, man. So you're like 13 or 14, and you've already got a good recommendation on your resume. That's wonderful.
Oh, and his wife, Dan, is the sweetest person you will ever meet. She is an amazing cook. She's so welcoming, and she also has said she would recommend me, so that's amazing.
Wow, that's great. Man, 2 comic book pros. That's fantastic. Well, congratulations, honestly. I think that's a great achievement, and I think it can only, and it sounds like it's only inspired you to continue your art career, and just good luck. Good luck in high school, and I think, it sounds like you are very excited about art, and you're heading in the right direction. So it's been a pleasure talking to you, and I thank you for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you so much. This is amazing.
There you go, Bryn Cimino. Good luck on that art career, Bryn. I think you're off to a great start, and thank you, John, for arranging for the interview. But I hope you enjoyed today's Word Balloon. It was a lot of fun, and as I said, man, Terrificon is just around the corner. Very, very excited to be a part of it. There's going to be a lot of great people there. Are you fans of Comic Book Men, Kevin Smith's show? Well, everybody but Walt Flanagan is going to be there. Brian Johnson and Mike Zapsik and Ming Chen. Looking forward to meeting those guys if they'll give me the time. But no, it's great. They're going to be doing some panels as well, and very excited about the lineup of panels that I'll be doing at Terrificon. I'll tell you more about them on the next episode of Word Balloon. I have a feeling I'll have 2 more episodes before the convention next weekend, August 17th through the 19th. Really excited about going to Mohegan Sun in Connecticut for Terrificon. And, hey, it's given me a wonderful excuse to talk to some of these incredible classic creators of some of our favorite comics, and also current creators as well. Looking forward to seeing my pals Mike Norton and Tim Seeley and Nick Spencer and Charles Soule and CB Cebulski. Man, I'll finally have CB on Word Balloon in a panel if all goes correctly. But also, I got to sit down with CB and have that great editor-in-chief chat. I love when people that I love in comics and really respect get the opportunity to sit in the big chair. Jeff Loeb at Marvel, Television, and certainly now CB, Steve Wacker at Marvel Animation. So it's going to be great to pick CB's brain in what the macro direction of Marvel will be in the months and years ahead. So very, very excited to be talking to them. And Pete Tomasi from DC, another guy that I haven't had a chance to sit down with at Word Balloon, but very excited to have him on that Superman panel with people like Roger Stern and Paul himself. It's going to be a great show. I can't wait to share the content with you. And truly, I hope if you're in the tri-state area, you'll come to Terrificon. Go to Terrificon.com for tickets. I'll tell you, Mitch Halleck is putting together a hell of a show. And its reputation preceded it, and was thrilled that Mitch asked me to be a part of it. And thrilled to have him as a sponsor for Word Balloon, but also to get the opportunity to do the panels that I'll be doing that weekend at Terrificon. I hope I still have a voice, because I'm going to need it for traffic when I get back. But regardless, can't wait to share with you some of the great content coming from Terrificon in Mohegan Sun the weekend of the 17th and the 19th. Hope you enjoyed today's show on Word Balloon. It was brought to you again by the League of Word Balloon listeners. Thank you very much, League, for your continued support. It was also brought to you by In Stock Trades at InStockTrades.com. And man, have they got some cool new books for you to check out that came out this week. The Batman 66 Omnibus is available. So many great writers, including my dear friends Art and Franco, were part of this run. But Jeff Parker wrote the bulk of this stuff. This collects the first 30 issues of Batman 66. It also includes the Lost episode #1 and a story from Solo #7. And that sounds like, was that a Darwin Cook story? I'm not really sure, but holy cow, man. A beautiful cover from Martin Anson that is just amazing. And I'm glad they finally figured out to get the rights to use the likenesses of all the characters. And really, if you never read Batman 66, you owe it to yourself. First of all, Parker and the other writers did such a great job of capturing the spirit of the show, but also finally, the Adam West, Burt Ward interpretation of Batman gets the big budget that really only happened in the first season and also the Batman 66 movie. Because as we know, as the second and third seasons happened, the budgets got cut. You got all those great, mostly black curtain villain lair sets with a few kind of one-dimensional, screens or fake walls to kind of, help the scenery and everything. But, we still loved it. Don't get me wrong. Second and third season are still a blast to watch. But it really, this case, you're getting, the Batboat more, the Batcopter, so many different locales and exciting scenarios in Batman 66 that just didn't happen on the TV show. I can't recommend it enough. This is a great run. It's 50% off, $62.50 for this omnibus. You can also get another great epic collection from Marvel, Marvel 2-in-1, presenting The Thing. And this is a great group of stories. You get Marvel Feature 11 through 12, Marvel 2-in-1 1 through 19, and Marvel Team Up number 47. Lots of great writers: Steve Gerber, Bill Matlow, great artists like Sal Buscema and Ron Wilson. This is a great book. Ron Wilson also going to be at Terrificon. Looking forward to talking to Ron. Man, I talked to him last year. I really want to get him on a solo word balloon because he's had a great career. Super boxers, for God's sake. Of course I got to talk to Ron Wilson. But check out his stuff in this Marvel 2-in-1 Epic Collection. It's 50% off, $19.99 at in-stock trades. You can also get the Spider-Man Last Hunt Deluxe Edition, Craven's Last Hunt. J.M. DeMatteis, Mike Zeck. I haven't had a chance. Mike Zeck is also going to be at Terrificon, by the way. DeMatteis will not. But we've had that conversation about Craven's Last Hunt. Got to have that conversation with Mike now. I had my first conversation with Mike on a Salt Lake City panel last year on Word Balloon. Got to get Mike back to continue. But this is 400 pages long. It's the deluxe edition. It also includes things like What If number 17, material from the Sensational Spider-Man Annual 96, also the Amazing Spider-Man 99 run from 634 to 637. What the number 3 also in there, as well as the epic story itself. It's 50% off. It's just $19.99. All waiting for you at InStockTrades.com. Check it out. Great books, great prices from your friends at InStockTrades.com. Thanks again for listening to Word Balloon. Always a pleasure to talk to you and bring you these great conversations. Next week, before Terrificon, you're going to hear about things from Joelle Jones and her wonderful Catwoman run. You're going to hear from Steve Orlando talking about his incredible books, both currently on the stands, like Wonder Woman. He's doing a great run on Wonder Woman right now in the midst of that, but also some really cool future things as well, not only from DC, but also from Aftershock and a couple other places as well. Really excited to welcome Steve back to Word Balloon. And, man, I just wrapped up a conversation as I'm recording this with Brian Edward Hill, who's been doing a wonderful job at Detective as well, and is writing on the Titans television show. So that conversation is coming to you soon. And then, of course, all this Terrificon content. I've been meaning to have another lunchtime conversation with Tim Seeley. We're going to do that probably post-Terrificon, so that'll be coming in the days ahead. And everybody else, there's a big lineup, and I am thrilled to share that with you and present as great a lineup as I can each episode right here at wordballoon.com. Thanks for listening. If you want to ask me any questions about the show, you can email me, john@wordballoon.com. Follow me on Twitter @JohnWordBalloon. And then, of course, on Facebook under my name, John Suntress, and the Word Balloon Network. So those are the ways to reach me. Email is best. Sometimes people will send me a message on the Word Balloon Network Facebook page, and I'll find it like months later and I'm embarrassed. Or they'll make a comment at wordballoon.com, and sometimes I suck and I don't remember to write that stuff up. So, the best place to reach me is really via my email. I check it every day, a couple times a day, john@wordballoon.com. Thanks a lot for listening. Really excited about the lineup still to come here in August. And thanks for being on the journey with me. Until next time, Word Balloon is a copyright feature of Shaky Productions, copyright 2018.